job because, Charlie, it was like he purposely, how he gently landed the plane on the water. The fuselage never broke up, never fully submerged. It came to a quick stop. The front door was open within, I would say, 30 seconds. I had, by that time, grabbed my binoculars, which I keep. Within a couple of minutes, a New York taxi, a waterway taxi, was there on the scene, and it was just floating there. And when I first saw it crash, of course, a lot of water went up, and I thought, oh my goodness, it's going to go under. I quickly called 911, but the plane never fully submerged.
We can, as you mentioned, the New York waterways, there are a lot of ferries that are crossing the Hudson River at this point. This is down just a little above the Times Square level, a little above for people who know New York. This is in the, I'm not sure exactly where it is, but it looks like it's in the 40s or the low 50s, the cross streets in New York at that point. And there you get some sense of the number of boats that are hovering around the aircraft. John was mentioning a moment ago some airports, and if you're local, if you're familiar with the New York local area, you would know those names. Perhaps you don't. But there are three main commercial airports in New York: Kennedy, which is off on Long Island, LaGuardia Airport, which is in Queens, and Newark Airport, obviously in Newark, New Jersey. John also mentioned Teterboro. That is an airport mostly used by private aviation airplanes, but it is an airport large enough that, as John mentioned, perhaps the pilot gave some thought of trying to make it to Teterboro because it is just across, not far across, the Hudson River from New York. But perhaps not feeling he could get that far, or his plane in such distress, he was able to set it down in the Hudson River, which, as we showed you on the map a moment ago, is just west of New York City. Now, air traffic controllers, their union, who we have contacted, are rather inclined to accept this bird strike issue. Lisa Stark, what do you know about that?
Charlie, what they're telling us is that it appears to have been a bird strike. Again, as you know, many of these initial reports do tend to be wrong, but they're saying they think it was a bird strike and that it was a large enough strike to actually show up on radar. And obviously bird strikes can be very, very dangerous to aircraft. And as John Nance was saying, at these altitudes, they can be a problem. We have not confirmed that. It'll take a long investigation, but that's the initial report. We're also hearing some reports, unconfirmed yet, that the pilot did report some sort of engine trouble just after takeoff. And as you said, as Robin said, he put the plane apparently quite nicely down in the river, it appears. And we don't know yet how many people are on board. There are reports that it could be as many as 146 passengers and a crew of 5. That has not been confirmed yet. You know, this has been the safest period in aviation history, Charlie. It has been 2 years, ever since the Comair accident in Lexington, 2 years without a fatal aviation accident. We don't know yet, of course, if anyone died on board this plane, but it has been remarkably safe in the air.
And we do have a report. Obviously, one of the first people we contacted was the Department of Homeland Security. An official there saying, and this is a quote, "There's no nexus to terrorism." I'm not sure how to interpret what that means, but my presumption is that that means there's no indication that any kind of terrorism could have been involved. And Robin, you mentioned you had binoculars on this, and we were able to see in one of the pictures that there were passengers standing out on the wing.
Yes.
As that plane floated. Have you been able to tell if that New York Waterways ferry or any other boat has been able to pick up passengers and get them out of there?
Oh, yes, and in fact, they have done a good job, and I don't see anyone on the wings anymore or coming out of the plane. From what I can see and looking, everyone has been taken off the plane by now, and in fact, the plane is moving closer to shore now. I don't know if it's the current or that they are also drifting it closer to shore right now, but not seeing. But also, it was just amazing. Again, from a little bit of a distance, but being able to see quite well, quite calm. The people that were standing out on the wings were quite calm. They were throwing out life preservers, life jackets, and just quite calm. But I need to comment again about the landing. It was as if the pilot used the Hudson River as a runway, because how it slowly descended. And the way it landed was just like he would be landing on a runway, except for it was water.
You can, as I'm looking at the pictures, it does look as if the plane is now beginning to lift slightly toward starboard. It's been very settled evenly in the water, but it now looks like the right side of the plane, the starboard side of the plane, is beginning to go down a little bit. But John, I'm fascinated by what Robin said, that they're beginning to move the plane. I guess you could take a tugboat, put it behind the wings, and nudge it along.
You actually probably could. It just depends on how fast the baggage compartments fill up and whether or not there's enough air left in the tanks to keep them buoyant until they got it to a to an area they could kind of shove it halfway ashore. The possibility of this airplane being rebuilt is very high. As a matter of fact, there was a DC-8 both back in the 60s. I don't even remember the date, that accidentally ditched in San Francisco Bay. Took them, I think, 9 months and however many millions of dollars, but they finally got the airplane back in the air. That was a Japan Airlines flight.
As I look at this, I don't suspect these are tugboats, and these are pretty experienced tugboat captains in the Hudson River. I don't suspect you could get a line under the wings and actually keep the plane afloat. That would be a greater weight than I think even these boats can support. But I am sort of intrigued by the notion that they can nudge it along, putting the bow of the tugs in the, if you'll excuse the expression, in sort of the armpit of the wings there, and push it along.
Yeah, it's quite possible that they will be able to do that successfully. I mean, I suppose you could even tie on to a certain portion of the tail. The baggage compartments, because the aircraft is no longer pressurized, will flood. But as I say, the wings may have enough buoyancy to keep the airplane afloat until they can get it to a shallower part.
Yeah, and you made the point a moment ago, that depends on how much fuel, how much air is in the tanks, depending on how much fuel the plane is carrying. That if there's air in those wing tanks, that would increase the buoyancy of the plane.
That's correct. And of course, one of the things to keep in mind, this is going to be a fairly short flight. The Airbus A320 is capable of flying quite a longer distance than the flight that it was on today to Charlotte, and consequently, because the airlines are always trying little fuel as they can with enough reserves, it would not be outside the realm of reason that they have basically 2/3 of those tanks empty.
And we're now looking at some pictures that I think are passengers who were on the plane being offloaded on land, having been brought to dry ground. I suspect I know they are very happy to be there. It's a very traumatic incident, although, as Robin Roberts mentioned, they were extremely calm, or appeared to be quite calm, as they stood on the wings of the plane. And Robin making mention of the fact that the rescue boats didn't know they were going to be rescue boats when they went out there, but they got so quickly to the airplane, and that obviously facilitated the evacuation. We don't know yet if anybody has been hurt. As we've mentioned a number of times, we're not certain of the number of people on board, although I must say I have been on, they changed the numbers of these